you got a try on that left-hand side. What happened?
Oh, but I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth, the podcast for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. My name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it, all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm easy enough to find on all the usual socials. And frankly, I always love to hear from you. We're part of the Sports Social Network, and you can find us wherever you typically get your content, whether YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other major platform. So there was some amazing rugby on offer this weekend. Why don't we get this thing on the road? Obviously, starting as always with our current updates, I want to again mention that some changes are coming to the show. So what I wanted to do when I started this thing more than 3.5 years ago was to create a space where I shared my love for all different forms of rugby, wherever it can be found. What I have somewhat painfully discovered is there just aren't very many people who follow more than one brand, more than one competition, more than one team. So I don't want to say too much at the moment, but I'm not trying to be cagey or anything, but there's a lot of details to be worked out. Suffice to say, we're going to take a brief break to retool in a couple of weeks, and I'm just really looking forward to getting to a new chapter. As always, thanks to all of you for coming along for the ride. It's really lovely to see the show grow, which is all about you, and I can't wait to increase that. If by some miracle or mishap you haven't yet done so, please like and subscribe, and if you could help spread the word, I would be eternally grateful. So that, of course, oh my gosh, so much good stuff this weekend. It brings us to our reviews. It was playoff time. That's right. It was the quarterfinals in the URC. I was very excited, obviously. There were 3 teams in the playoffs last season that didn't make it this time. Ospreys, Benetton, and Ulster, all of whom got knocked out in the first round, of course. This year, those teams had been effectively replaced by Edinburgh Sharks and the feisty Scarlets, who have had a thrilling season in a lot of ways. On Friday, it was Glasgow home for the Stormers. The Stormers would be looking to revenge their quarterfinal loss to Glasgow just last season. I said it a few weeks ago. I figured the Warriors season ended today, but they came out firing in the first half, building a nice lead with Tom Jordan looking especially spicy. Sione Tuipulotu, he was back. He seems to have spent his time in rehab learning how to be really annoying to the opposition, and that skill was on full display. It was 19-13 at halftime, but the Stormers got back within a point before Kyle Rowe got his first try since round 6 in Stellenbosch, padding the Glasgow lead to 2 scores. Then we got a spectacular try from George Horn, his 13th of the year and 58th for the club, more than anyone else. And after the conversion, it was 33-18. There was plenty of time to turn things around, but the body language from the visitors looked like they were already losing hope. Side note, there are just too many coaches in the Stormers coaching box. Like, if you're hopping up and down trying to see over a bunch of dudes' heads, like, maybe you're surplus to requirements, Anyway, as we entered the final quarter of play, Joseph Dweba came on for the first time and looked really annoyed about it. Like, seeing him and Monty Lebach coming in off the bench, bit of a surprise for me, and it looked like it was working out in Glasgow's favor. Stormers became their own worst enemy. It became clear they weren't going to put anything together to get back in it, with discipline issues, handling errors galore, not to mention 39 missed tackles before the game ended. A bit shocking given their late season form. It got bad enough that they actually got a shot of Franco Smith smiling in the box, a rare treat. A final score, a perfect double up, 36-18. It may well be that Scotstoun is the Stormers' hoodoo. That's 2 years running. They've seen their season end in the Glaswegian wins. Early Sunday, of course, early Saturday, it was the Bulls hosting Edinburgh, a team I honestly didn't expect to be a part of the postseason at all. It was a stunning, gorgeous day in Pretoria. After a yellow card for smashing Darcy Graham right in the head, a hit the Coms described as, quote, a glancing blow, despite his body having gone partially limp with the impact. Wes Goosen, he got into the corner for the first try of the day. And yes, I know, there was basically nothing the defender could have done in the air to avoid the contact. I know it was accidental. It just grosses me out when the comms actively minimize these things. Ross Thompson, he snuck through for a crafty try soon afterwards. It was 3-14 before a quarter hour had gone by. The home team showed flashes of brilliance, of course, and they were only down 18-21 at the break. Only a couple of minutes in the second half, Kanan Moody got a go-ahead score. I wrote a big uh-oh in my notes. It was a disappointing, if somewhat predictable, second stanza for the men in orange. The Bulls sweeping them away and ending an up and down season, 42-33. Edinburgh, they should be a lot better with this roster, and there's definitely a piece missing somehow. Leinster versus Scarlets, of course, this looked like a classic pile driver versus soup cracker matchup, but let us not forget, Scarlets overturned the great beasts of Dublin by way of South Africa and New Zealand back at the end of April. Did I expect a repeat of that performance? No, I did not. Was I really, really hoping for one? Oh my, yes. As it unfolded, by minute 12, Leinster were scoring a point a minute, but with a spectacular breakaway try right on halftime, it was a very reasonable 15-14 as they went to the lockers. I wrote the word hope question mark and circled it a few times. Couple of yellow cards, though, didn't help the Scarlets' cause. Unfortunately, they never managed to take a lead at any point, just hovering within a couple of scores. By the end, it was 33-21. If there was an award for a surprise team of the year, I'd absolutely give it to Scarlets. They have outpaced my expectations by some ways. The upset of Leinster a few weeks ago, that's like a trophy unto itself. They should mount a big plush Geordie Barrett head above the mantle in the clubhouse. Finally, buckle up, my friends. The Sharks were at home in Durban to face Munster. This was the match I was most looking forward to, mostly because I had no idea which way it would go. If you told me Sharks would end up winning by 3 scores, I'd be like, okay, makes sense. But the exact opposite held true as well. Munster, of course, had never won in Durban, losing twice and getting a draw, if I heard the comms correctly. Munster getting the first try 10 minutes in certainly quieted the crowd, and when Crowley converted it, you could actually hear them going, "Aww." As the first half drew to a close with no score from the home side, the crowd seemed to be getting a bit angry, as were the comms. Right on 55 minutes, the Sharks took their first lead as we overheard a funny exchange between Mike Adamson, the lead official, and a remonstrating player, where Adamson ended the chat by saying, "That's an opinion, but mine matters." So just when things looked terminal for the home team, they found a spark. They were suddenly driving with a ton of momentum, down just 4 points with about 8 minutes to go. They grabbed the lead as the stadium erupted. But with under 4 minutes now showing, Connor Murray had a shot at tying things back up, and we were headed to overtime. What a roller coaster. How good was this game? It ramped up inevitably over the 80 minutes and could only have come to this when they gave us the shots of both teams gathering around their medics and water carriers. By the way, who knows what substances may lie in supersaturation in those rose-colored liquids in mysterious vials. But you felt the moment, the tension, the power, all the lead up, all the arduous hours that they had to get through to even be here. This game captured that quintessence. It was mouth-watering as we headed to extra time. Mini side note, they gave us a close-up of the Munster huddle with the coaching staff as they prepared. It was like a sevens final, but after the head coach had finished, Peter O'Mahony just started talking. All the other coaches just shut their mouths entirely and listened. O'Mahony gave his clear and compelling instructions. Every third word was an F-bomb. The comms didn't even do their usual thing where they say, "Oh, sorry if there was any inappropriate language in there." Everyone and everything was fully all in. This was it. It was an incredible 9 minutes, 50 seconds that had elapsed scoreless when the Sharks attempted a drop goal, which was rudely rebuffed by the Munster defense. I've never seen a drop goal so thoroughly doinked backwards. That was the end of 10 minutes of the extras. In double overtime, Andre Esterhausen was the only person on the field not looking sweaty and exhausted. I wondered if he might be the one to make a difference. If he did, I also wondered if any of you would believe that I actually wrote that down before it happened. But we would see what we would see. The beauty of the extra time, it's the magnification, every single slip up, every slightly mishandled ball, every tiny detail, all those things that don't matter too much that you can shake off in the first half. Those things become monstrous, monumental when the clock is counting down your final moments. And this, with spent players who have given their all for a full season. As Hendricks kicked it out after a second 10 minutes, we were on to something I'm not sure I'd ever seen, a penalty kicking contest. Quote, "It's mind-boggling stuff," said the comms. "Unprecedented scenes here in Durban tonight," unquote. By the way, because I'd never seen this, I was wondering all kinds of things. Is it like you can't use the same kicker twice, but always from the same spot? Or is it the same kicker gets all the kicks, but it's from increasingly difficult angles? I had no frame of reference, and even the comms seemed a bit stunned by this transpiring in only the fourth year of this competition. Quote, players don't even know where they'll be kicking from, unquote, said the comms. And I was more confused than ever. I'm still unclear a bit on the full guidelines, but Jaden Hendrick says, pretend injury nearby, forestalling Jack Crowley's kick, icing the kicker, I suppose, was pretty funny. I'm not a Sharks fan, so I can't love it, but I'm certainly not a Munster fan, so meh. So, by the way, since I initially wrote this, and by the way, I don't believe for 1 second it was an actual leg cramp. The rugby socials have gone bonkers with cries of bitter recriminations, desperate pearl-clutching accusations of horrible foul play. But you know what? Crowley made the shot. Hendricks gave us a cheeky wink, and it's all fine. Like, if you think for 1 second that these are tactics that South African teams won't employ, then you're not ready to play this match. So it was an incredibly dramatic finish. Rory Scannell's lone miss the difference in the end, and the Sharks would advance to their first ever semifinal, edging out their foes in a penalty shootout. Just incredible. This was without a doubt the most incredible ending I've ever seen, not because of like a greater importance on the global rugby scale, but because I've simply never seen it come down to this. Like, it's a fitting irony to lose a game of footy off the boot. Final side note, Tyg Byrne, the Munster captain, he gave one of the best post-match interviews I've ever seen. He was so open and honest and insightful. I didn't know I was a Tyg Byrne fan before today, but now I know. So, swinging down to the Southern Hemisphere, we began the weekend with a potential stinker in Super Rugby Pacific. My beleaguered Highlanders hosting the Chiefs. Blow Rugby decided it wasn't worth showing us the first 20 minutes of this match, and you know what? Maybe they were right. It was already a 19-point lead for the visitors as the replay started, but on the cusp of halftime, it was the human wrecking ball, Timothy Tamatawai, smashing through to make it a contest, 14-19. My guys showed some positive signs and tried their best to hang around, but as Tupou Vaa'i broke through as the final seconds wound down, it was another thorough and convincing victory for the Chiefs, 24-41 in Dunedin. Next up, it was the Brumbies hosting the Crusaders for First Nations round. I forgot to mention, so there was a huge and beautiful ceremony before the game kicked off. Tons of cool details, like the teams coming out together. That was nice. Facing one another in a boomerang formation, like there was a smoking ceremony. Like, it was fantastic. The trappings were through the roof. I love this stuff. The game itself was an exciting one, but the visitors started to get the upper hand, thanks in part to a Sebo Ruiz shocking everyone with an out-of-nowhere drop goal. Didn't know he had that particular arrow in his quiver. But in the second half, an exciting Andy Muirhead try drew the scores level. We were in for an edge-of-your-seat conclusion. With under 10 minutes to go, it was Nola Lolacio, who's been really solid off the boot this year, getting the home team their first lead, but the visitors quickly grabbed it back to the hoots and catcalls of the crowd, who were rightly chagrined at a non-call for a Sebo Ruiz knock-on. The Brumbies had one final shot, but it came to nothing. A deflated crowd was stunned into silence as the Crusaders did what they do best, winning a heartbreaker, 31-33. Blues versus Waratahs. It was the very definition of a must-win for both teams. But despite the home team's struggles this season, the Taz hadn't won at Eden Park since 2013, and the Blues, lifted by the return of Mark Talea, came out firing. The lead was 24-6 as we kicked off the second half, and the visitors couldn't find another point all night. A massive 46-6 win for the home side, and a crushing blow for a Waratah season that held so much promise. A worthy note was that Rico Ioane scored his 55th try in the game, equaling Doug Howlett for top try scorer all time for the Blues. Interesting stuff. Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica. That was up next. The mojo Moana had found earlier this season seems to have worn off. They got spanked last week, and it somehow got worse in Wellington as the Canes trounced them thoroughly, 64-12. I have no idea what happened with the visitors. It's been a sudden and shocking collapse. The Reds versus the Fijian Drua, that was our final offering of the round, and the conditions were abysmal. The Drua again failed to show up on the road, getting shut out 33-0 at halftime. And side note, during halftime, they showed a promo for the upcoming Lions tour, which was like, right on the border between super intense and really, really silly. It was obvious that the real reason they made this ad was to have an opportunity to put Joseph Suaalii on TV without a shirt. Anyway, right as the clock went red, it was Joseph Bryle getting an insult to injury try to make it 52-7. I doubted there would be much celebrating in the Fijian locker room after this one. So that actually wrapped up the regular season for Super Rugby Pacific. Really snuck up on me, I admit. I had somehow fooled myself into thinking there was one more round. As we talked about previously, the Super Rugby playoffs are a thing of madness, but I'll see if I can explain. So the top 6 teams are into what they call the qualifying finals, with 1 versus 6, 2 versus 5, and 3 versus 4. The 3 teams that win advance, along with what they've decided to call the lucky loser, which is the highest seeded team that lost. So you can lose a playoff game and then advance in the playoffs. Anyway, those 4 teams compete in a semifinal with the winners obviously going to the grand final. That means next weekend we've got Crusaders versus Reds. On Friday, Chiefs versus Blues, and Brumbies versus Hurricanes on Saturday. You'll recall that Blues won it all last season, but this year they'll have to win 3 consecutive playoff games on the road to repeat that feat. Personally, I'm hoping at least one Aussie team will advance, but who knows? Maybe it's better for some of those players to get into camp to prepare for the Lions' arrival. So meanwhile, over in the Prem, switching back to the other hemisphere, it was the final round of the Premiership. All the fixtures were played simultaneously on Saturday, something I always actually really appreciate. Exeter, they lost at home to Sale, 26-30, Teehee. Gloucester, they took their chance to beat up Northampton, 41-26. Sorry about that. Leicester handed Newcastle yet another loss to ensure their worst season ever, 42-20. How do they even come back from this? Like, after begging money from the rest of the league? I mean, Ealing must be like, hello? Bristol somehow doubled up my Harlequins, a whopping 52-26, an incredible season for the Bears. But of course, the big one, as mentioned last week, Saracens versus Bath. The series did exactly as I had posited, with Bath starting Fergus Burke at fly half and resting other key players. The Saracens nabbed the win they needed, 36-26, but in the end, it was all for naught. That meant the narrow knife edge of the playoff scenario was in full focus. I'm not convinced this sentence actually makes sense, however. Anyway, with the regular season concluded, the semifinals come screeching our way. Bath hosting Bristol in what I have to assume is going to be a high-scoring game. And then Leicester Tigers hosting Sale Sharks. I have no idea what to expect in that one. But it's lovely that the Prem's semis, sync up with the URC semis. And then I actually really like the fact that we have to wait a week or so for the top 14. Speaking of which, hopping over to France for the top 14, it was the penultimate round. It's worth looking at the playoff picture before we dive in. Toulouse, my Border Beagles, and Toulon, they were all guaranteed a spot in the postseason. So was Bayonne, to my surprise. Clermont, they had a mathematical chance of equaling Bayonne's points total. Bayonne would still edge them out, though, due to games won. Castres, La Rochelle, Clermont, Parole City, Pau, Racing, and Lyon were all still fighting for that elusive chance, while Stade Francais, Perpignan, and Vannes were all eliminated. The big question in this comp, however, is always about relegation. And while it's looked like Vannes' goose was cooked quite a while ago, they still had a chance to stay in the top 14 and doubted it. How? Well, if Perpignan failed to secure any points in the remaining 2 matches and Vannes won both of theirs, they would move above Perpignan, thus avoiding automatic relegation and securing at least the 13th spot. If Vannes won both their matches with bonus points, and both Perpignan and Stade Francais lose both of their remaining 2 matches with no bonus points, then Vannes would finish above both of them. In this very specific and unlikely scenario, Vannes would move into 12th place, thus avoiding both automatic relegation and the relegation playoff. Here's hoping, right? Anyway, so, pardon me, to unfurl the drama, we began on Saturday. Clermont pounded Stade Francais 55-20. Youch. Castres, they also battered their guests Bayonne 33-3. Racing lost just barely to Montpellier 25-27. Ugh, on that one. Vannes, they got doubled up at home against Pau. That was the end of that, 26-52. La Rochelle, they really slapped around Perpignan, 38-15. A lot of lopsided home games this week. All of that was on Saturday. On Sunday, Toulouse were hosting Lyon. The comms said if Lyon were hoping for a rotated Toulouse squad, they were out of luck, and they were right as rain. Toulouse up 17-3 at halftime, and it got bad after that, 43-3 by the end. We've seen some colossal scores this weekend. It's been a little crazy, right? So Toulon versus Ubebe was our final fixture in France for the weekend. I was very happy to hear the dulcet tones of Robbie Knock, friend of the pod on lead comms. He was greatly enjoying himself as things got started. They had a helicopter with ominous-looking special forces dudes descending on ropes with the goal of delivering the match ball. They were unable to complete their impossible mission until a random guy in civvies came out, like to help them retrieve the ball from a black bag. It was honestly really funny for everyone except, of course, the guy who couldn't keep the bag from being blown away by the rotors. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to not look like a numpty on a national broadcast. Toulon, they looked pretty good against the full second-string Beagles. It was 20-10 at the break and 27-10 after a pretty boring second half, frankly. I did feel bad that my team were pretty mediocre and lost to a team they probably should have beaten. But you know what? I honestly don't care that much after last weekend. So moving on and coming back home to the United States, we're starting with MLR. The game of the week was obviously my Free Jacks, home to face the Seawolves of Seattle, who had earlier this season stolen the coveted coffee cup from us. There are a few of these storied, trophied rivalries left in Major League Rugby these days, so this one feels important. It was a horrifying start for my guys. Seattle nabbed a try in under 30 seconds. Then another just a few minutes later. We were stunned to see 0-12 in the scoreboard. Our fans always tend to think that we're being shortchanged by the officials, but today, I mean, it was completely over the top. I've never heard people getting on the refs so bad. To be fair, he's not the most experienced, and he was missing some things, which gave the Seawolves license to keep trying to get away with more and more stuff. And, it felt like it snowballed a little bit, but I admit I am incredibly biased. And okay, side note, got to talk about the officials in MLR. Major League Rugby is a young competition. Our domestic players are still learning and growing. That means we also need to expect that our officials are also learning and growing as well. Like, of course, we don't have the world's top referees. That wouldn't even make sense. So for now, I think we all need to chill a bit, accept the fact that there's going to be hiccups and things will get missed. We should try to keep in mind that's a fact right across the board. There's no targeting one team. There's no this ref loves this team and hates our team stuff going on. That stuff is ridiculous. We're on a journey together here, people, and everyone involved is in the same boat. Let's just take a chill pill. Anyway, the place was totally jammed. The Free Jacks mounted an incredible comeback, really dominating large parts of the second half, though we took our foot off the gas as things kind of wrapped up. Final score, 37-30, and we brought the coffee cup back home to Massachusetts. Yes! So, by the way, the best and worst things about this game. Jason Patras was back for the first time in months. It was so great to see him out there, to see his incredible kicking, his passing once again. And then, at some point in the second half, he went down in a lot of pain, had to ultimately be helped off the field. It was honestly the most heartbreaking thing I've seen, like in person. All that hard work to get back on the mat to match fitness, then bang, he's off again before full time. He must be absolutely devastated, as am I, as are all Free Jacks fans. I don't know the extent of the injury yet, obviously, but it did not look promising. Potty, we love you, and I wish you all the best. We really miss you, and I just hope you all the best for your speedy recovery. I hope to see you back on the pitch. If it's here or Taranaki or somewhere else in the NPC, you are the best. Meanwhile, elsewhere around the league, Chicago, they smashed NOLA 38-17. By the way, before the season started, Phil from the Jacks Rangers show and I both worried aloud about the potential for NOLA to be really, really good this year, and we were both really, really wrong. Anyway, I was greatly pleased to see DC losing again, this time to the LA Bellends, 32-43. Utah handed Anthem another loss, 31-10. And finally, Miami beat the floundering San Diego Legion 36-32 in a really exciting contest. Don't forget, San Diego opened the season on a 5-game winning streak, but now find themselves basement dwellers on the Western Conference table. It's been dramatic, and I've really enjoyed it. So next week is our final round. We'll look at playoff scenarios next week when everything is written in stone. There are still several items left to be determined. Of course, the other domestic competition here locally, it's Women's Elite Rugby, the WER. We had a full round of all three fixtures. I'll start with a side note. I love this competition. I've watched every Banshees game and many others, even now after the streaming service deal fell through. It is truly a great competition. I foresee huge, great, big things for it. Wow, that sounded stupid. But the website has somehow managed to get significantly worse since the start of the season, and that's happened twice. As I say, this is a brand new competition, and there's going to be hiccups. I'm not going to sit here and throw shade. Instead, I can point you all to a different website, the Rugby Breakdown. I'm their newest, biggest fan. I've linked to them in the show notes. Absolutely check them out. Like, I just read up about all the salaries and team budgets in the WER. Saying anything critical in any way feels foolish, and the website shouldn't be a priority. I just wanted to point out another resource. So anyway, things really tightened up this week as the stupid team from New York that nobody likes beat Denver, the Onyx's first loss of the season, 24-17. How do you like them apples? Twin Cities Gemini were home for Chicago and continued the visitors' streak of futility, though by a mere 2 points. 12-10. Does that mean Chicago are on the cusp of their first win? So the game of the week, however, had to be my Boston Banshees at home for the Bay Breakers. Regular listeners will know I've been very much looking forward to going to this match, but we couldn't arrange childcare at the last minute for the day. So I offered my seat to a former student of my partner who played rugby for Wellesley College and had been really wanting to check out the Banshees. We lost 31-22, but it was a great day for them. I got to see the great pictures. The parking situation, I'm pleased to report, seems to have been sorted out. And the home of the MLR final in just a few weeks. Wow. It looks absolutely grand. It's a great facility. Everything about the trip, and excepting the result, was beautiful. Well, my friends, by the music, you'll know it's time for this week's Diamond in the Ruck Award. This week, the award goes to Sione Tuapalatu. Mr. Tuapalatu, your return this week, it created such a spark for your team that everyone around you looked elevated. Your beautiful, furious combination of brutality and evasiveness, for me, made the difference in advancing to the semifinals. You and your Warriors have a truly monumental task ahead of you this coming weekend, but you looked the most on-form player all weekend, and I have a tiny, sneaky suspicion that you could make a difference in a potentially huge upset. Sione Tuapalatu, congratulations to you, for you are this week's Diamond in the Ruck. Well done, sir. Okay, that brings us to our updates and previews, and holy cow, it's all coming to a head. It's the semifinals in the URC. It's the semifinals in the Prem. It's the qualifying finals, a phrase I hope to soon expunge from my brain, in Super Rugby Pacific, making 7 knockouts at the highest level, just a mouth-watering smorgasbord for top-tier rugby. The MLR has its final round, with many playoff implications yet to be decided. The WER is down to just a couple weeks remaining, and the top 14 is finally coming to a close for their regular season. Of course, if I have missed anything, if you think, why does he never talk about this? Get in touch, reach out, let me know. I would love to know. I always value your thoughts, your feedback, even a snarky comment. Please send it my way. I would honestly love to hear from you. Well, my friends, that does it for another week. I'm really, really, really looking forward to next weekend. It's going to be epic. I'm about 3 or 4 weeks away from being incredibly bummed that it's all over, but I'm hoping by then I'll be thinking more about the beach. So to all of you across the globe, cheers, talk to you soon, and be well.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
No, it doesn't. You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?